Welcome to the Final Girls podcast, where we explore the intersections of horror film and feminism. This is Anna, co-founder of the Final Girls and your podcast host. Over the next few months, we're tracing the lineage of female monsters in horror cinema, and in each episode of this series, I'm joined by a special guest to deep dive into a monster movie or two. We're now more than halfway through the season and getting into some fascinating, often underseen or under-discussed films from the 2000s. And today's episode is all about vaginas. Namely, a tooth vagina. Actually, a killer one. The 2007 horror comedy Teeth takes on the myth of the vagina dentata. And in the film, which mixes slapstick, body horror, and horny teen movie tropes, teenage chastity advocate Dawn discovers that she has a toothed vagina when she becomes the object of male violence. This grisly premise sets the scene for much hilarity, and a lot of it at the expense of hapless, horny teenage boys. If this sounds appealing to you, then the film is available to watch now on the horror streaming service Shudder. I'm joined in this episode by friend of the Final Girls, writer and podcaster Becky Dark, for what turns out to be one of the funnest episodes of the series so far. As always, our conversation will contain spoilers from the very beginning, and also be warned, in case that is not your bag, there are a lot of dick jokes. And with that said, enjoy our conversation about Teeth. Becky, welcome back to the podcast. How are you doing?
Hello, Anna. I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Probably not as relaxed as you. You've just come back from a lovely, gorgeous little holiday.
I've just had a delovely. This is how chilled I am. I've literally forgotten how English works. A delovely holiday, which is a mix between delightful and lovely. Yeah, we've been gothing it up in Whitby, hanging out with Big Drac himself and eating a lot of fish and chips. It's been great.
Honestly, a dream. If I could just hang out with vampires, eat fish and chips all day long, sign me up. That's how I want to live.
Yeah, it was really great, and we were chatting a bit before we started recording, and like there were just dogs everywhere. It was, it was like, yeah, it was dreamy. So yeah, I'm feeling very chill. I know that you have had a much more stressful kind of 48 hours of lectures and travel and all that kind of stuff. So it's fine. We'll support each other through. You can energize me, and I will try and chill you out a little bit with my vibes.
Oh, you've already chilled me out, babes. But also, you make it sound so glamorous. I was eating a Pret sandwich on a train and watching Teeth and freaking out the people around me on the train.
I love watching horror on trains so much. Like on your laptop, just shameless, kind of showing the whole world around you, the little like fucked up world that we live in. I love it.
I think I particularly might have freaked out the woman on the, because we're all social distancing, so the woman on the table next to me moved quite suddenly, and I think it was because I was trying to take the perfect screenshot of the crab on top of the severed penis. So I think that might have done the trick.
Oh, I love it so much. Yeah, that's an image, isn't it?
I thought it was hilarious. So anyway, it was delovely.
Yeah. Oh, the delovely crab.
So, Becky, let's talk about some severed dicks.
Oh, please.
All right. What can I do for you, miss? Is this your first time? Okay. So I imagine you have no idea what to expect.
Not really.
Don't worry. I'm not going to bite you. Just lie down. Put your feet right in here. Okay. Are you sexually active?
No, I just want to be checked out.
Okay, then.
I think there might be something weird going on inside.
What? What's What have you put in here?
There is something inside of me that's lethal. Dentata.
What?
It's Latin for teeth. It's what's inside me. Are you afraid?
This is too weird.
Just wait.
To kick right off, what is your relationship with teeth? Had you seen this film before, or was this the first time that you were watching it?
Yeah, so I'd seen it before. I love this film like so much, and I was thinking about it because I knew that question was coming, and I'm sort of thinking like, what is my relationship with this film? But I came to it relatively late. And one of the reasons I did is because when it first came out, it was one of those films, a little bit like, I think, Jennifer's Body, and other kind of very female-centric horrors that kind of came out in the early to mid 2000s, that just kind of didn't get a great critical reception. So I remember in those days I cared a little bit more about what the critics thought about films than I do now in my slightly more jaded late 30s. And I remember seeing some reviews for Teeth and sort of turning my nose up at it, or rather not turning my nose up at it, but rather reading reviews by people who had turned their nose up at it. And I remember Jennifer's Body being a really similar thing. Like the reception was just, I think the people who were reviewing it, men, they just didn't get it, right? So it was something, right? So it was something that didn't necessarily. Like basically I didn't watch it when it first came out. I gave it a bit of a swerve, and then as I have started to become more involved in sort of talking about horror rather than just watching it in a darkened bedroom on my own, this was one of those films that I was like, do you know what, this has got to be better than people said it was when it came out. I'm reading the synopsis and hearing other people talk about it and thinking like, this literally sounds like a film that was made for me. Like, what was 2006 me thinking? And so I watched it for the first time, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and just absolutely loved it straight off the bat. And then I've rewatched it for talking about it with you today, and again, I've just it's funny actually, I got a slightly different vibe from it this time. I think I picked up on the comedy beats a little bit more on it this time. I think the first time I watched it, I was just so kind of horrified by what Dawn was going through, and all of these sort of dreadful men, and you know, every guy, like apart from her stepdad really, but every guy that she seems to encounter is just so hideous in their own special way. And I think the first time I watched it, I was much more affected by that, and this time because obviously I kind of knew what was coming from the male side of the film, I was able to appreciate the more kind of the sort of slightly like ridiculous comedy that kind of underlies it all as well, and a lot more of the sort of irony and stuff. So yeah, big fan.
That's so interesting, because I had a similar recollection of it as more straightforward horror. And when I was rewatching it on the train, back from a talk I had to do, I was like, this is ridiculously funny. Like, this is very over the top kind of John Watersy comedy, and I am here for it.
100%.
But I wanted to ask you kind of, what do you make of this balance between horror and comedy and the tone that the movie straddles?
I think it straddles that line really effectively, actually. And I think when people talk about horror comedy, a lot of the time the emphasis is on whether it's funny and whether it's scary, and to be a successful horror comedy, you kind of need to be both. I don't find Teeth frightening, but I think it's got such effective kind of shock and gore, and that the kind of the mythology elements that it wraps in and stuff, like I think the world building of it around that is really great. Like they don't kind of waste too much time talking about the practicalities behind the fact that she's got teeth in her vagina. It's just like you get a classic sort of internet search where she reads a couple of web pages, she has a doctor's examination, and then boom, like we know what it is. I think tonally it's great. Like for me, as I say, this time I found it more funny, and I don't find it like, it's not a scary film. I find it like satisfying, you know. Oh, Anna. Oh, babe, you wait till some of my notes for this film are just things like just the shot of her standing between her legs and it drops from her onto the floor is literally one of my favorite shots in cinema, and then Mother the dog is eating it. Ha 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 ha, all in caps. Like that's literally it. That's my note.
One of my last notes is the dog eats the dick.
Yeah. It's just so good.
It's so funny. But I laughed so hard at you saying satisfying, because I imagine that there is a very different reaction from different audiences to this film.
I would assume so.
I'm trying to be very polite, but basically I think that this is a film that probably rings so true to so many kind of female experiences, but also to this like genuine fear of vaginas.
Yeah.
Culturally, visually, on screen, everything, and just this intense over-sexualization of the female body at the same time as trying to violate it in some ways.
And at the same time as trying to suppress it. It's like this ridiculous kind of seesaw of women are literally sex objects. That's all we care about. But if they show any interest in sex or their own sexuality, then they are like doomed or evil or dirty or sluts or whatever. I mean, like, you know, you look at Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion's recent single WAP and the reaction to that. Like, firstly, banger. And secondly,
absolutely.
the vitriol that has come out against that, and the fact that these are two black rappers, hip hop, you know, superstars who have completely owned their own sexuality and put out this hit. And like amazing, it's not even like it's just a kind of controversial song and that's why it's got interest. Like it's a legitimate tune, right? And then you look at the other side, like, you know, so many male artists in the same genre who do nothing through their lyrics but like sexualize and degrade women, who are now up in arms and all fucking fluttering like, oh, I declare, like it's so outrageous. It's just, it's like, that is what this film is to me. This amazing kind of like, I don't know, this just fucking dysfunctional relationship, as you say, to like vaginas.
Becky Dark, are you saying that Teeth is the WAP of horror films?
Yes, I am, my friend. Yes, I am.
I'm so happy right now. It just made me so happy. My whole day has gotten so much better.
That was entirely organic as well. That
Thank
ain't
you.
in my notes. I didn't come up with that beforehand, babes.
I should point out, though, that this film is, interestingly, it isn't actually coming from a female creative voice. It's written and directed by Mitchell Lichtenstein, which I learned literally 30 seconds ago is the son of Roy Lichtenstein, the pop artist.
Yeah.
Son of
Who's
Roy.
like one of my favorite artists of all time. And now all I can think of is that my biggest dream is to go round to their house for like macaroni cheese or something and just chat to them both. I'd be so happy.
So, going back into the film, kind of what do you make of Dawn O'Keefe, our protagonist?
I mean, she just goes on such a journey, doesn't she?
Yes,
Like we
bless her.
literally meet her on, well, actually, we kind of first meet her in the flashback. You sort of see their house in the shadow of this power station, and her in the paddling pool with her stepbrother Brad, who is just like, oh my god. I mean, we'll come on to talk about Brad, but then when we meet kind of grown up Dawn, she is on stage talking about like celibacy and abstinence, and so there's this kind of culture. I only know it as an American thing, although I'm sure it's I'm sure it goes on in other countries as well. But this idea of kind of the promise and the purity ring, and she's this very pure. She keeps using the word purity almost as this mantra. We kind of see her like she's blonde, she wears these pastels and like jumpers with unicorns on, or literally t-shirts with slogans about like saving yourself for marriage and stuff. She wears the purity ring to remind herself that, you know, she will save herself for the father of her children, etc. She kind of cycles to and from work. She says hello to her neighbors. She listens to like Christian rock in her bedroom. Like she's just this absolute like picture of kind of teen purity. But you know, that is only very much on the outside, which it always is with these things, because all you ever do with organizations like The Promise is kind of tamp down the hormonal urges and like the sexuality of teens, and therefore kind of it has this I don't know, like this risk, I guess, of becoming kind of volcanic. Like you just kind of, you keep pushing it down until it's got nowhere further to go, until it just like bursts out of you. And that's what happens in this film. You know, she goes from being this very sort of pure and abstinent teen and very kind of dedicated to it as well. Like you do get the feeling that there's that comes from a root of authenticity with her. It's not being forced upon her. But then as soon as she meets, you know, Toby, and they've got this like immediate kind of like hormonal teenage chemistry connection thing. And it all sort of, you know, starts to go downhill from there, which
They fancy each other.
they fancy each other. Exactly. They like, how natural is that? They just fancy each other. But because they're both kind of involved in this abstinence thing, they're not able, like they just don't feel able to kind of act on that in a natural way. And it all kind of goes to shit, I guess.
You mentioned a lot about kind of the ideas of purity and what's expected of Dawn and of teenage girls, but she does seem to want men. Like she's definitely obviously got a crush on Toby and stuff. So what do you think her relationship with men is, especially as she discovers her ability?
Well,
All this podcast is just gonna be us giggling, like
just us giggling. It's just like, it's such a horny film, and I've been so excited to talk to you about it, because it's on one hand like super horny, which is then it's kind of contrasted so beautifully within the film with this like repression of all of those feelings, and this idea that the more you push them down, the more they're going to bubble up. But yeah, you know, her relationship with men is complicated, like it is for any woman or anyone who's attracted to men, as you know, like romantically or sexually. Like it's quite nice to see a film in which she's actually got a really healthy relationship with her stepdad. So there's nothing kind of bad going on there, which I think would have been a really kind of easy decision for the film to make, and it, you know, it doesn't do that, which is great. So she does have this like really nice kind of wholesome family relationship with her stepdad and with her mum, who, you know, sadly is really sick. She's got this completely fucked up relationship with her stepbrother Brad, not from any fault of her own, but literally because he is essentially in love with her, or believes that he is in love with her. Like, he's basically infatuated / obsessed with her. And at one point actually gets like physically violent with his dad about it. Like, why did you marry her mum? Like, why did you make her my sister? And so much of Brad's kind of issues within the film, you find out really are kind of, there's like this, I don't know, this like sewer of kind of like sort of inappropriate, but not because they're related by blood, but just because like she 100% doesn't see him that way. You know, she
sees him as a brother. Yeah,
she sees him as a brother, and I think that she really kind of would like that sibling relationship, and to have him as another like supportive man in her life, like his dad is to her. But all he sees her is a sexual object, and he has essentially let him like let that poison him. And then with Toby, he is essentially just a kind of like sex object to her, but very reluctantly from her point of view. It's like she totally crushes on him and she like fantasizes about him, but she knows that in inverted commas that is wrong. And so, you know, there's a lot of guilt and kind of shame that kind of comes along with that. And then with the other guys in the film, it's just like the doctor and that other boy that kind of fancies her and ends up like having the bet about her and having sex with her. And then essentially it's the like hitchhiker, the like the driver at the end who she hitchhikes with, and it's like almost every single guy in this film that she finds herself up against in some way just wants to kind of, I don't know, like control her body and like sexualize her and like sexually like assault, or it's like Anna, these guys, all of them,
the audacity
fucking, like the audacity, they all deserve what's coming to them. That's all I've got to say.
That first encounter with Toby, I think, is the moment where the tone really shifts. Like, it was so cutesy, very horny, and then that scene is real dark. Like, it's probably, I think, the darkest scene for me in a film where penises literally get like chomped off and fall on the floor. That is the darkest scene, because you can see the point where he goes from like, oh, you know, purity rings, #abstinence, we're waiting for each other, to like, oh, oh, you just passed out? Oh, no, that's okay. I'll still do what I need to do. There's like intense dark intent behind him, and it is a sexual assault scene, and you're like suddenly taken aback. At least I was like, oh fuck, wait, no, that's not the movie that I was expecting to see, but fine. And it's a real her like journey after that, because this is all spoilerific, Toby dies. It's pretty much implied, but we'll find that out a little bit later on in the film for sure when we see his body in the morgue. But she's wrestling with so much guilt over that. She's like, what is wrong with me? What did I do wrong? What the hell is inside of me? Like, I'm a monster. And we're with her the entire journey, and it's a very heightened, it's a comedic approach to it, but it is kind of the journey of anyone who's been, you know, wronged or violated or assaulted in some way. Like, there's a big chunk of it that is guilt, And I think kind of in its own comedic way, the film is kind of tapping into that. So it's using extremes to showing something to how this young woman is reacting to, she's done nothing wrong, but she did inadvertently hurt someone. But
yeah, it's this is the one aspect of the film that I grapple with a little more, because like he rapes her, you know, they are having this very sort of initially sweet, you know, encounter where they've gone swimming and stuff, and as you say, like that tone just changes so quickly, and she is so clear and vocal at every single stage. She tells him to stay in the water, like don't get out of the water and come up here. She says to him like you know, no, like I've made a sacred promise, and then like he sort of starts to force himself on her, and she's saying like, you know, get off, like she literally says at one point, I'm saying no, and he still like forces himself upon her. And then her kind of physical like defense system kicks in, and like he dies. Like he must bleed to death because, you know, she bites his penis off with her vagina. But afterwards there is such a, I feel that the film concentrates quite a lot on the fact that he's missing and she doesn't know where he is, and like she kind of can't get hold of him. The fact that she almost feels guilty, like there are feelings of guilt that come along with victims of sexual assault, but I'm not sure that the film necessarily paints this as guilt, that she feels that she kind of led him on, or that she was somehow complicit in the rape. I feel that it kind of paints it as guilt that she feels for, you know, the physical harm that she did him. And then she just seems to get so distracted, or the film seems to get so distracted by then her trying to figure out like the teeth thing, and the fact that he's missing, and the fact that she's guilty about the fact that she's hurt him, that actually it doesn't deal a lot with the fact that he like full on raped her, and, you know, took her virginity, took that purity and chastity that she so authentically wanted to keep. And sure, you know, that was very much grappling with her hormones and her like sexual feelings towards him, but she was saying to him in the immediate moments, like before that assault, like, you know, we made a sacred promise, you know, I'm saying no, get off me. And I just for me, it's the one kind of aspect of the film that I feel just doesn't quite, I don't know, work with maybe some of the messages that it otherwise successfully really manages to convey.
And what do you think are some of the ones that it successfully manages to convey?
I think the irony between programs like The Promise and kind of chastity rings and purity rings, and the idea that will somehow make teenagers less horny, but actually it's just going to make them way more horny. I think ideas around like women having control over their own bodies, messages around this idea of men and kind of the patriarchy having fear of female power, and this kind of mysticism that comes along with like female sexuality, which I think the film does a really nice job of conveying quite subtly, like through just the action of the film and the actions of the characters. But also then you just also get that really lovely bit where she's like done the classic online research and she's literally narrating it. She's just like, the myth springs from primitive masculine dread of the mystery of the woman and sexual union, the power and horror of female sexuality, the womb as a dark crucible. And it's like,
the dark crucible that hatched him is my favorite line ever. The dark Crucible.
I mean, I am never referring to my womb as anything other than the Dark Crucible from now on.
I hope that's a
so-
follow-up single to WAP, to be honest. Dark Crucible.
So good.
I'm ready to bob to the Dark Crucible by Megan Thee Stallion.
Hell yeah. Please, can you and I, like, maybe record a... like a, I don't know, some kind of, like
a goth sing, version of WAP, but it's
nice.
like the Dark Crucible that hatched all men. You must return to it.
some sort of concept album. It would be amazing.
I love the microfiche. Microfiche. That's not even a thing anymore. Fuck, how old am I? The Googling of vagina dentata and kind of, the monster vagina.
And then her reaction when she sees like the little kind of like statuette of it. she like just like recoils from the screen. It's just so perfect.
Then, I mean, it follows on quite a bit on in the film, but then when they're sort of describing the tooth that is stuck in Toby, they call it like a cross between a shark and an eel. I was like, whoa. Oh, that is quite pointy.
And he's like, so you mean that this thing kind of attacked him? And the doctor's like, no, it's human. It's like, yeah, it is.
So what do you think then about the vagina dentata as the monster of the film? I love Dawn in this because she's born this way. She doesn't become a monster. She's not transformed into one. Mm-hmm. She always had this sort of internal defense mechanism.
Yeah, I love it. And yeah, so I love that she goes on quite a different, like quite a kind of complicated journey with it as well. Like it starts off and she's so freaked out by it, and then she kind of comes to terms with it, and then by the end of it, like it sort of protects her, and then by the end of it she's sort of weaponizing it, and I really love that. I love that she, throughout the course of the film, she really just kind of owns it. And like it's a double-edged sword, because the only way that she can use it as a weapon is for her to kind of be violated, because we see her have sex successfully and like pleasurably, that she enjoys and she's up for it and she's consenting, and the upshot of that is that the kind of defense mechanism, the dentata, doesn't kick in, right? It doesn't attack. And I think that gives some real hope to the film. It gives some hope for Dawn in the future, because it's like, well, as long as she's having sex that she is into, then it's not like it's gonna kind of interfere with her sexual pleasure in future, which is great. And I love that she has it to kind of act as her protector, but at the same time it's like she just shouldn't have to, but all of these guys just keep essentially violating her. I'm a big fan of it as this kind of this defense mechanism for her, and if she's in threat or she's uncomfortable with kind of what's happening to her, then it kind of kicks in, and hopefully it means that in future she'll be able to have a successful wank guilt-free and without losing any digits.
I thought you'd already said the best sentence in this episode, and I was wrong. This was it. I hope she can have a successful wank without losing any digits. Becky Dark.
I mean, just no young woman should be denied that right, Anna, is what I'm saying. Especially not by your own vagina.
You know what? Amen. Yes. Let that be. If you're going to take one thing from this season, listener, let it be that. No girl should be denied The
Oh my god.
the right to have a wank without losing her fingers. And on that note, what did you think of the effects?
Oh, amazing. Like so great. They are used they're used quite sparingly. So although there isn't it's not a film that's drenched in blood, that there's not loads of gore all the way through it. The couple of shots that you get, like 2 or 3 of either the severed penises themselves, looking sort of very sad and detached, or the shots of like the guys' groins as they kind of cradle themselves, with just like blood kind of gushing, like, well, they just look kind of horrified. I mean, like, this is, if you haven't already picked up on this, Anna, this is very much my vibe.
I'm definitely picking up on that, Becky.
I think that the effects very successfully convey the brutality of it, but also, like, I talked earlier about it being like quite a satisfying film, and I don't think it would be as satisfying to the viewer. Probably, speaking as a woman, like, if it was just implied, it would be cool. But because you really get to see it, like, you get to see severed dicks on floors and then like gushing holes where the dick was like 30 seconds ago. I just that kind of it just really kind of brings that home.
I fully expected you to say right there, that just puts a smile on my face, and I was almost gobsmacked when you didn't.
Look, I know that this is an audio medium, but I think everybody knows that there's a smile on my face right now.
I can hear your smile from my headphones as I'm saying it as well. No, I think, do you know what? I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think this would have been an entirely different film, a much shyer film, if it didn't show the severed penises.
Yeah.
Because it has sort of a cult following now. It certainly kind of didn't fare super well with critics when it came out, even though it was at Sundance successfully, and it won. Jess Weixler, who plays the lead, Dawn, won an award at Sundance as well for her performance.
She's amazing.
Yeah, she's extraordinary. She's so funny.
Yeah.
But if it was just the implication, then it would have been much more art house, much more kind of serious horror. But there is something ridiculous. There is something ridiculous about the image, just the image of a penis detached from a man's body on the floor. It looks so sad.
I think when it's contrasted so sort of strongly, I guess, with the violent acts that often precede that. So with Toby, he rapes her. With the second guy, whose name I actually haven't picked up, but the guy who
it is Ryan.
Ryan. So Ryan, the guy who has the bet. Even though it looks at first like he's doing all the right things. He's lit candles and he's got a vibrator, and it's like, oh,
he was reading a book called Pleasuring Women. When she arrived at his garage. I was going to say his house, his garage.
What a little teen Romeo. But then you also kind of realize that he's like there's that really, really funny moment. Like, we talk about Jen Weixler being like really, great at the comedy beats and stuff. There's that bit when she's in the bath at his place, and he comes in and you just kind of hear him off screen, and he says, my mom takes these when she needs to relax, and like the way her hand just like shoots up out of the bubbles because she's just like, gimme. It's so good. But then, like, he doesn't tell her till afterwards that they'll kind of make her woozy. Then he throws champagne on top of it as well, and so I feel that there is a bit of like not date rape, because she does consent, like verbally consent, but I don't know, like that just it feels a bit nasty to me, the fact that he's kind of given her this stuff that makes her woozy, but he didn't tell her that before he gave it to her, and then like they're drinking as well. Anyway, but he's literally inside her when he takes this phone call and admits to her that he had the bet with his friend that he could have sex with her, and then chomp, like the defense mechanism kicks in. She's like, oh, this guy is a dickhead. He is a bad man. Let's get rid of this penis.
To be fair, she should have chomped it off just because he picked up the fucking phone while he was having sex with her.
Thank you.
Like that
100%.
in itself. No.
100%. But just so there's no like doubt in it, you add the bet on top. It's like, okay, right, well, she's entirely justified now.
Yeah.
It's not just that he's being a bit rude. It's like, no, he's actually bad egg.
Yes. That's a massive red flag.
Oh, dreadful. Just dreadful behavior. And then with Brad later, like, I mean, that is proper, you know, she goes in there. That is the sort of first moment that she really weaponizes this thing that she's got, right? This ability.
She weaponizes the WAP.
Yeah.
I can't stop. I won't stop.
Please, can we get t-shirts that say weaponize my WAP?
Becky, you know I will. You know making fake t-shirts is my passion.
Oh my God, I'm dead.
This is the most teenage podcast we've ever recorded together.
Oh my God, you've killed me. The point I was trying to make, Anna, was that
I'm bringing the quality down.
No, you're not. No, you're not. You're meeting me in the gutters. That's what's happening. So, you get Toby the rapist. He is hard inside her when, obviously, he's raping her. You get Ryan the gambler, sure. The romantic gambler, who is hard inside her when she bites it off. And then you get Brad, this creepy stepbrother who literally didn't go to her mum's cries for help because he was too busy doing his girlfriend Michelle in the ass when all she really wants him to do is do her in the vagina. It's like he's a very bad man, and so she again chomps it off when he's hard. And it's these beautiful like contrasts between the violence and the like her just being degraded and kind of like disrespected time and time and time again with these erect penises, and then she chops them off, and then you get the effects of those just sad little nubs on the floor. And it's that's the glory of this movie.
I think, yes, you're right. And especially the fact that Brad is such a ridiculous little man. Like, he's extremely nothing. And so kind of, he like punches Ryan in the face when he comes by, tries to ask her out on a date. And like, he literally does not help her sick mom when she's crying out for help.
Honestly.
Like, that's that relationship with her mother. And, you know, you mentioned before she's got a really lovely relationship with her stepdad as well. But that's her family, her mom. And he basically lets her die.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brad's gonna go.
I mean, his tattoos are terrible.
I mean,
like, so bad.
So bad.
And he keeps a dog in a cage.
He is
and he makes his girlfriend eat dog biscuits. And all of this adds up to bad Brad. But then, like you say, like, he really does kind of take that, well, that just like unbelievable, unforgivable step of like Melanie says something to her when says something to Dawn when they're at the hospital, like, oh, he said like she does it all the time and to just ignore it.
Yeah.
And it's like she's dead now. Like Dawn has lost her mum. But you need that extremity for Dawn to then kind of start like taking that like proactive action, don't you, for her to like really go down the revenge route.
And it's also the perfect sort of bookend for Dawn, because the film starts with her and Brad sort of as small children, kind of playing in the pool, and we can see that that's when that we know that the defense mechanism has always been there, because Brad touches her and he gets a bit of his finger, not chopped off, but he gets hurt, and then he is the final kind of weight on her shoulders that she needs to get rid of in a way. So he hurts her the most when he essentially causes the death of her mother and doesn't help her. So it has to, that chapter of her journey sort of starts in a way and ends with Brad. So she has to kill him. She has to finish him off. Brad has to go.
Absolutely. That's such a good way of putting it.
And then, the next with the ending, she's off on her merry way. She's hitchhiking. What do you make of the ending?
I like it because I think that it shows that she is going to be able to protect herself. She's had to remove herself from the situation that she had at home, with like after Toby and Ryan and the doctor and Brad. I do worry about Dad a little bit, because
Dad did nothing wrong.
Dad did nothing wrong, and like he's lost his wife and his daughter, and his son now has no penis, so he's probably going to have even more of a chip on his shoulder than he did in the first place, so he's going to have that to deal with. So like, I don't know, I'd like to see some sort of like post-credits sting, just where we find out that Dad is somehow happy. But for Dawn, like, I love that there's this idea that she has left all of that behind, and that she's gonna be able to protect herself, at least in that way. And I hope to God that she, well, one of two things: either she never has to use it again, and this was just like a kind of dark and sort of violent part of her adolescence that she can then like leave behind and move on. Or, and I kind of prefer this maybe as an option, she becomes some sort of like avenging angel and kind of goes out there and like chops off loads of rapists' penises with her vagina. Teeth 2.
I'm into it.
The revenge.
Yes. Teeth 2. The weaponing.
Oh my god.
I am a child. I'm so sorry.
Good. No, it's too good. It's too good. I'm speechless. I think there's an argument to be made that it's like, oh, for fuck's sake, like she just got in like a guy's car, like she's just like, why does he also have to be a creep? Like,
he was
she
so gross.
That thing where she like wakes up and that look on his face, the way he's like smacking his lips.
He's doing the thing with the tongue. I was like, fucking bite, just get your murder vagina to bite it off.
Right. So I think there's part of me that sort of thinks like, oh, come on, like, give the girl a break. Like, potentially, even if I'm being very generous, give men a bit of a break, because, it's another one, right? Like, straight away, it's like, come on, can't she have one car ride without somebody trying to like fuck her? But I think that the movie deals with it well, and as this kind of comedy aspect, just the kind of way that she's just so suddenly like resigned to it, and the way she just sort of turns and like looks to him with this little smile on her face, and you can sort of think to yourself like, yeah, you're gonna get what's fucking coming to you, mate.
Yes. I love the little smile at the end. Like how her face changes and she almost like remembers
Yes.
her power. She's like, "Oh, you don't know what's coming to you."
You're messing with the wrong vagina, buddy.
Is there anything that we haven't spoken about that you wanted to talk about teeth?
So yeah, there was one final thing that I sort of wanted to ask you about. Really, was so the home, their home, and a lot of the movie, like the town, sort of plays out in the shadow of this power station, and obviously. Dawn has got this kind of mutation, I guess you could call it. You know, there's a scene in the science class where the teacher is talking about like rattlesnakes, and there's a lot of kind of sort of satirical religious subtext under the movie, and the fact that the more religious students in the class are kind of rolling their eyes over the explanations of evolution and stuff. And also Dawn's mum is unwell, and you get this idea that is like quite a kind of ongoing disease or condition she's got. I don't know if it's cancer, but again, I wonder if it's caused, or the suggestion is that it's kind of caused by these huge sort of hulking, towering chimneys that kind of overshadow the scene. And I wondered what you thought about that. Like, you know, do you think that the film is explicitly kind of trying to weave in an environmental message? And also, do you think that the suggestion is that Dawn's vagina dentata is kind of a result of that?
I think that's a very good read on the film. I have two opinions. My opinion is split, much like those guys' dicks. Anyway,
Yes.
this is why I'm single. So I think that the film kind of gives us so much about that. The fact that her mom is sick, or everything you've just said. I think that's plenty for us to understand that, you know, a sort of a rational explanation for the vagina dentata is that it's like a genetic mutation of some sort. And there's plenty of seeds planted to support that. I take that, but I don't think it's necessarily the point of the film, because I think that one of the most interesting aspect of it is the sort of the mythological and the cultural baggage of vaginas, essentially, and the way that men see Dawn and her body, and the way that she's not listened to. One of the best scenes, I think, of the film, both in terms of just wild humor and also the execution of the scene, is when she goes to the gynecologist for an exam.
Yeah.
And it's like it's a very sterile environment, and there's nothing kind of untoward happening. She's having a regular sort of checkup, but he's not listening. He's not even seeing her. He's not paying attention to what she's telling him. And, you know, the defense mechanism cuts off 4 of his fingers. And like she's fully freaking out in that scene. But kind of the point that I'm trying to make is the fact that the explanation as to why she's like that, I find the least interesting aspect about it. So I actually agree with you that I think the nuclear power plant thing is sort of the background explanation for within the universe of the film as to why this is happening to her. That it's not that she's, you know, some sort of like mythological avenger of women, that she's the dark crucible that's come back to like avenge all men for being dipshits to women. I don't think it's that. I think it's, you know, that sort of might be the logical sort of explanation of the birth of this girl, this creature. But actually what the film is interested in is in the reactions to her.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I love that. I think it is a why, or it's suggested as a possibility for the why, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's not the key kind of theme, is it? It's not the key message. Also, with the doctor, so I wanted to ask. He takes his glove off when he's examining her, and like, because at first he's got gloves on, and then there's one point that he takes one of his gloves off, and it's that glove that he's then using to test her flexibility. And again, you know, she's sort of saying to him, you know, it hurts, please stop. And he's like, oh, you know, just breathe through the pain or some bullshit.
Yeah.
But again, with him taking his glove off, I wondered if that was meant to show that he was kind of, I don't know, like taking some sort of liberty that he shouldn't have been, and also if it was some sort of taking the place of this idea of actually if a man, if a couple start to have sex and the person who is being penetrated, it understands that the penetrator is wearing a condom, for example, and then partway into the act that condom is removed without the other person's knowledge or without their consent, that actually does count as kind of sexual assault. And I wondered if that was like, maybe, I don't know, again, I may be reading into it, but I wondered if that was kind of a comment on that.
I think that's a really interesting reading. I mean, on the other thing that really struck me about that scene, and I genuinely don't know if this is like deliberately written into the script or if it's one of those things that, you know, one of those details that perhaps, as it is a script written by and directed by men, is something that just nobody thought about at the point. But he uses like 4 fingers to quote unquote test her flexibility.
Yeah.
And the glove thing that you bring up, a lot of it is suspiciously not what a doctor does, not what a gynecologist does at an exam.
Yeah. I said at the beginning of our chat actually that the first time I watched the film, I was much more kind of taken by the shock of, you know, what was done to Dawn throughout the film, and this time I saw much more of the comedy. And there is so much about that scene, and you alluded to this, that is fucking hilarious. Like the slapstick of when
scoot out a bit more, scoot.
And then like the way that she sort of thrashes about, and he's like thrown around the room, and then she like gets kind of flipped over. Like, it's, you know, it is so brilliantly done. Like, it is such a great scene. But definitely that was one, probably the most standout scene, that as we were coming into it on this viewing, I was almost considering like skipping it. Like, oh, I know what happens in this. Like, I don't need to watch it again. Like, I don't need to see her be kind of violated by this man in a place of like trust and authority. I'll skip it. And then I was like, no, come on. Like, you probably don't know it well enough. Like, you should just watch the whole film. So I was like, okay. I was a bit like her. I was like, right, grit your teeth, breathe through the pain. And actually, then on second, as I was watching it, I was like, oh, actually, it's not as bad as I remembered. And it was, I'm glad that I watched it because I really did get the comedy out of it. But I was interested, I guess, to see again that there are these couple of things that happen that do just make it feel untoward, you know?
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. And I think I would be so curious, because I can definitely kind of read into it intent, but I do wonder if it's deliberate, and I actually don't know if the intention is there or not. And, you know, I'm a big believer that kind of audiences can read things into the film that the filmmakers didn't necessarily put there intentionally. And I think this might be one of them. I think it's like one of those things that say, you know, a more experienced Dawn would have caught on much early on. It's like,
Yeah.
no, you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
That's not okay. But I think perhaps it's one of those things that's tied into her innocence, to her absolute lack of worldliness. And
Yeah.
I mean, her like absolute lack of awareness of how people operate and how people think, and also of how people see her, because she doesn't necessarily see herself as a sexualized being, but people definitely see her like that. And of the things that are okay and not okay for figures of authority to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think her kind of her experience and her like worldliness come up in other parts of the film as well, because there was a point that she has got this fantastic relationship with her mum. We don't see a lot of it, but it really successfully kind of conveys that they've got a very close and loving relationship. And I think after, maybe it is when she's just kind of doing the Googling, and I sort of thought, like, why she immediately sort of turns to this? Like, why doesn't she go and talk to her mum? And I think, again, it's almost this idea of, she's basically been indoctrinated into this way of thinking that is like, it's just shame. Like, her immediate reaction to any feelings or actions around sex or sexual desire or sexual kind of curiosity around her own body is just immediate feelings of shame and guilt. And the idea that means that even though she's got a very healthy relationship with her mum, that she can't kind of go to her as a first port of call, I just thought, again, was just like quite sad, but also just sort of something that was maybe being sort of commented on, this idea that, rather than in the sex ed class, like, they've got the pictures of the penis in the book, but the picture of the vulva has got this enormous sticker over it.
Enormous gold sticker.
Like,
and the teacher like can't even say the word vulva or vagina.
Yeah.
He's like, the female bits.
Yeah. Exactly. And also the fact that it's like an enormous gold star, just I thought was so hilarious.
Yes.
It's like, well done, you got this far, but you don't get to see it. And just again, this whole idea around teens being told that these are shameful feelings, shameful acts, and the outcome of that being destructive rather than protecting them. It's supposed to be protective, but it's not. At the end of the day, it's controlling. And whenever you try to control somebody around, sort of natural, positive things, urges, pleasure, it's so often going to backfire and become much more destructive than it would have been if you'd just educated them and listened to them in the first place. And I do think that the film is very successful in getting that message across.
Becky, that's such a wonderful note to wrap up our conversation on. Thank you so much for your time.
This has been the most fun ever. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about severed penises and weaponizing our WAPs.
I could not have this conversation with anyone else. Thank you so much for indulging my teenage boy humor.
Oh, my pleasure.
Becky, where can people find out more of your work online?
On Twitter, I am @BunnyDark. I'm doing more and more writing, so you can find my film reviews on the Zobo with a Shotgun website and also on Filmbusters. And I'm just, generally around pretty much every podcast that is in your feed. You'll be well and truly bored of my voice by now.
Podcaster extraordinaire, Becky Dark. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Anna.
That is all for this episode of the Final Girls podcast. Thank you for listening, and you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your shows. If you can, please do leave us a review or just a rating on Apple Podcasts. It really does help a lot. You can find out more about what we do on thefinalgirls.co.uk and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Final Girls UK. You can also follow Becky on Twitter at BunnyDark, and I tweet mostly dick jokes on Anna B. Demented. Thank you for listening, and next week we're going to go deep into a jumbo-sized episode with a double bill of murder cheerleading horror films, with the wonderful Jordan Cruciola as our guest to talk about Jennifer's Body and All Cheerleaders Die.